Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to dive into something that affects millions of people, but honestly is still pretty misunderstood. We're talking about insulin resistance. We're going to break down exactly what it is, and more importantly, give you a simple, powerful toolkit you can start using to improve it, like today. So let's get right into it.
Okay, let's just kick things off with a pretty big question. What if you could totally transform how your body handles food in less time than it takes to get through a long weekend? I know, it sounds a little bit like science fiction, right? But it really shows just how incredibly fast our bodies can adapt when we give them the right signals. And we'll come back to exactly how this is possible, I promise. So first things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is insulin resistance, really? Well, think of insulin as the key that unlocks your cells to let sugar, or glucose, inside to be used for energy. When you've got insulin resistance, that key, well, it just doesn't work so well anymore. The lock is kind of rusty or stuck. So instead of fueling your cells, that sugar just ends up hanging around and building up in your blood.
You know, this whole process is kind of a hidden struggle happening inside your body, and it can affect everything from your daily energy levels to your long-term health. But here is the most important part of this whole conversation. You are not powerless here. And that brings us to probably the most powerful message of this entire explainer. This is not a life sentence, not even close. Insulin resistance can be massively improved, and in a lot of cases, it can even be completely reversed. You really do have the power to make a huge difference. Okay, so where do we start? What's tool number one in our toolkit? It's maybe the most powerful one of them all, what you actually put on your plate. Your nutrition is the absolute foundation for getting your body more sensitive to insulin again. And look, the focus here isn't on some crazy super restrictive diet that's impossible to stick to. It's really about a few key principles. The big idea is to add more plant-based foods, stuff that's packed with fiber, to limit the ultra-processed stuff, and, this one's a big one, to cut out those sugar-sweetened drinks. Just that last one can have a huge impact all on its own. So remember that wild claim I made right at the start about a 3 times improvement in just 3 days? Well, that actually comes from a really fascinating observation that was made in patients who had type 1 diabetes. The results were, frankly, staggering. When these patients just switched what they were eating from a standard high-fat diet to a whole food, plant-forward diet, their bodies became 3 times more responsive to insulin. Let that sink in for a second. Their cells literally got better at their jobs almost overnight.
And this wasn't some fluke. The expert who observed this saw it happen time and time again. It's just incredible proof that what we eat isn't just about some long-term, far-off goal. The effects can be immediate, and they can be profound. All right, on to our next tool, exercise. But let's think about it a little differently. It's not just about burning calories. It's about actively remodeling your body and how it uses and stores energy. And this brings us to a debate I'm sure we've all had. You've got 30 minutes, you want to make it count. Where do you put your energy? Cardio or strength training? Now, while all movement is absolutely good for you, when we're talking specifically about insulin resistance, there's a pretty clear winner. You see, building skeletal muscle through resistance training is an absolute game changer. Here's why. More muscle basically means you have more places to put the sugar that's in your blood. It's like upgrading from a small fuel tank to a massive one. It just gives all that glucose somewhere to go, so it doesn't just linger in your bloodstream. That's why strength training is so effective. Our third tool is a little different. It's not about what you eat or how you move, but when you eat. Let's talk a little bit about meal timing and the whole concept of fasting. Now, it's really important to know that these terms get thrown around and used interchangeably, but they're not the same thing. Time-restricted eating is about when you eat each day, like only eating within an 8-hour window. Intermittent fasting, on the other hand, is usually about seriously cutting back on calories, but only on certain days of the week. So what's the verdict here? Is fasting some kind of magic bullet? Well, for a lot of people, the biggest benefit actually comes down to something really simple. When you have a smaller window to eat, you just tend to eat fewer calories overall. It can be a really useful tool in the toolkit, for sure, but it's not a magic pill, and it's definitely not a requirement for everyone. And now for our final tool. And this is the one that really holds everything else up. We're going to call it your health's foundation. And that foundation is sleep. I love this analogy. Think about it. You wouldn't spend all this money and effort building your dream house on top of a cracked, crumbling foundation, right? Of course not.
The whole thing would be unstable. Well, the exact same logic applies to your health. If your sleep is a mess, every other healthy thing you try to do is being built on shaky ground. You see, a lack of sleep puts your body into a constant, low-grade state of stress. It raises your stress hormone, cortisol. It messes with your judgment, which suddenly makes that donut look a lot more appealing than the healthy meal you planned. But when you get good sleep, your body can rest, it can repair, and it can regulate its hormones, setting you up to win the next day. So there you have it. That's the toolkit. Using the power on your plate, moving to remodel your body, using the clock as a tool, and of course, solidifying everything with the foundation of sleep. The only question left is, which tool are you going to pick up first? What's the one small change, the one brick you can lay for your own foundation, starting today?